Hi guys, I'm back again today with the continuation of the Buy Me a Coffee request, and this is political liberalism. Oh, somebody help me. But anyways, yeah, before we do start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and I already did the first part, so we're gonna finish off the video. Let's get it. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and help me out in my pronunciation or
Who?
Mad
reading.
Max, everybody's fighting for resources and
You could
petrol
say that.
and,
Why not?
and
Yeah, you could.
machinery and
Yeah. Yes, yes. But remember, this is fictitious, right? So it's a fictitious state of nature. It's fake. It's fake. It's a myth. So their religion, the religion of liberalism, is based on a myth. This myth of everyone's fighting each other is a fictitious state. And then there comes along this leader, this big strong man. I'm not talking about Muhammad Hijab, the learned one. This big strong man comes along, okay, or monster. Leviathan actually was a biblical character in the Bible. It was like and or this state or something. These people, they come along, and these people who are fighting each other come to them and say, "Look, we're going to give up part of our freedom. We are going to give up part of our freedom in exchange for you to protect us." Okay, which is what happens in marriage, but maybe not for you because you cannot provide that service in marriage.
This is talking to.
He said, what was initially required to stop this war? And you didn't finish. He said, what Hobbes said.
Say again.
You said that Hobbes said fictitious nature. And then he said, human beings are at war by nature. This is the original state. What was initially required to stop this war?
Yeah, so you needed this big strong man. A
Oh,
big
okay,
strong
sorry,
man.
sorry.
Yeah, so this
needed-
figurative, metaphoric, this monster to come and say, "Look, I'm going to take care of business. Don't mess around." Yeah? Don't mess around. So this big strong monster comes and he says, "Look, you give me your freedom in exchange for I'll give you protection." And this idea of, let's call it the big strong man idea for the monster, this comes and gives the protection, became known as the social contract. So how does the social contract work? Social contract is we are born free, but then we give our freedom up, or some part of our freedom up, to the big strong man, which is the state or the government or the parliament. Parliament is sovereign in this country. That's actually a statement of it's a statute reality, right? Parliament is sovereign. You give your freedom to whoever it may be that's in charge, and they'll protect you in return. Now, in truth, this doesn't happen. In the real world, it doesn't happen. What really happens? I mean, where were you born?
Pakistan.
Pakistan. Where were you born?
I was born in the UK,
Okay. Where were you born?
Turkey.
That's okay. Oh, yeah. Where were you born?
Sri Lanka.
Subhanallah, this is like what?
So many places.
Anyone born anywhere else? Okay, same place. Okay, when you were born in any of those
I
countries,
said, we didn't ask you, where was you born?
right here in the great nation,
On this
in the
chair.
great nation, what happened was, when we were born, our parents took us to the registry office, or I don't know what they called, and then they did your birth certificate, and then they put your name on the birth certificate, and the man, he brought out this nice special pen. Have you ever seen the pen? Have you seen a pen?
The one you bought, that's fake.
No. The man, it's a very special ink and all this kind of thing, and put your name in it, and that's it. You are now part of the country. You are. Then after that, what happens is, after a while, take a picture of the child. You send it to whoever you send it to, and then they give you what? A passport. I know you're still waiting for one of those, but but they give you a passport. Red. Now they've made it black. Sometimes it's blue. In other countries it's green, and sometimes purple.
Purple.
Now I want to ask a question. At what point did we agree? Because when you have the passport, when you have that passport or that document or the birth certificate or any of that stuff, now you have to obey what?
The law.
You have to obey the law, right? And what happens if you don't obey the law? You're in trouble. So we go back to what the social. How do they justify this? Why are they taking away? Because look, think about it. Me, Obeying the law is an infringement of my liberties, of my freedom. How do you justify forcing me to drive 30 miles an hour?
But I don't know if I don't know where he's going to go with this, but I'm gonna like insert something before we go to the point of all this. If there's no law, it's gonna be a purge, right? People are gonna kill everyone, and it's like everybody's gonna act animalistic if there's no discipline or laws, right? Like the Bible, like the holy books, the Torah, like the Quran, like those are kind of like our guidelines to follow, right? I mean, whatever you believe in. So the law is there, even if it's kind of like imposing on our freedom, it's still needed because we need those things to survive, or else if we're born and then we start like when we start knowing how to like think for ourselves, then it's gonna be over for a lot of people because people start just they're just gonna like steal people's things, they're gonna kill people, it's gonna be a mayhem, right? So I know I don't know what he's gonna say, but let's see.
How dare you right, tell me to drive that. And if not, I have to do the speed awareness course that I've done 4 times.
Okay.
You see.
He needs help.
Or I have to, you know, whatever it may be, drive this, do that. If I slap somebody I don't like, I have to go to some, you know, why do I? Okay, fine, that one we can, the harm principle. But still, you know, I can't do certain things. Why? Because the law says so. Why? Because there's a social contract. That's how, on liberalism, how they justify it. We've given up part of our freedom in exchange for what? Protection. Because they'll tell you, but don't you also benefit from the police? Well, I don't, to be honest. Do you benefit from the ambulance? Yes, sometimes. You know, sometimes not, to be honest. Do you benefit from the army? Well, actually, my people are not benefiting from the army in the least, but put that all to the side. You're benefiting from the NHS or this or that or whatever. So we're protecting you, we're saving your life, we're helping you out in exchange for your freedom. Yes? But
kind
I
of
never
like
made that contract. I never signed anything.
It's kind of contradictory, but I feel like it's necessary. I think, right? What do you think? Do you think it's necessary to have these leaders protect us? I know they're not necessarily doing so, but I feel like it's necessary. I know it's contradictory, I know, but still, I don't know how else I can like say it.
It was my mum who signed, or my
Yeah.
dad went to the place, and I was forced, let's be honest, into a social contract.
Also, your mum and dad were forced because
Yes.
they didn't, they're in trouble.
Exactly. Good. Yeah, very good. But do you know, so what's the difference between the fictitious, the fake, the myth state of nature, which Hobbes is talking about, and the real reality? What's the one major difference? Yes, that's right. You don't decide. In the fictitious state of nature, the people in society, they're going to the big strong man and saying, we're going to volitionally give you. But in reality, none of the social contracts ever, it's a contract that I was forced into. It's like a forced marriage. It is they talk about forced marriage. I have been forced into the marriage of citizenship. You see? And I've been compelled into obeying the law. Now, on liberalism, this is really difficult. Because how can you justify taking my freedom away in this manner? You have to justify it through the social contract, just purely on liberalism. But the social contract, for it to be really efficacious and to be genuine and legitimate, like any contract, in liberalism, it has to be reciprocal and transactional, and both parties must agree. But that doesn't happen. So you do have a problem.
Because you're forced to, right?
Some liberals will say that that even though it looks like you're potentially being forced into this situation, what's really happening is that you're being guaranteed the most amount of freedom you could feasibly have, because without that being the case, then within a state of nature you're going to have a net sort of less amount of freedom. That makes sense.
Of course, that is
Yeah.
what it's not what they will say. It's what they'll say. It's the lesser of two evils. It's not what we want. you know, and depending on where they are on the spectrum, they want more or less intervention. So we mentioned Robert Nozick, who wrote State, Anarchy and Utopia. It's a very important book, actually. And he basically argues that you should have a very small state that does minimal work. Oh my God. Yeah. And others argue the opposite, right? Sorry. So anyway, just to move on, John Locke had a different idea of the state of nature. He said, we're not all fighting each other. He said, all mankind who will but consult it, that being all equal and independent, no one ought to harm another life, liberty or possessions. He had more of a positive and optimistic understanding of the human condition. The human condition is being defined differently by these liberals. But it's interesting how they all define it differently but come to the same conclusion. So Hobbes is they're all fighting each other. Locke is not, they're not fighting each other. They're more maybe conciliatory, but they're all saying what we need is someone to come and take control of the situation. Now, this is extremely important now. You're starting with the social, we said it's a mythological state of nature. It's fictitious because it didn't happen the way they are describing. There was no transaction that took place. There was no Leviathan. There was no whatever. What really happened, I was born in this country and I was given a birth certificate. But we didn't consent, yeah? So what you'll find is that this is really, really interesting. Is liberalism and authoritarianism in any way conceivable to be put together? Can Hitler, who was socially liberal in many ways, he was socially liberal in many ways, you know, can fascism coexist with liberalism? Is there such a thing as liberal fascism? Well, if you have a very strong theory of social contract, you can justify it. And I'll tell you how. Look at what Kant says. He says, it is the duty of the people to bear any abuse of the supreme power. Can you imagine? Immanuel Kant. I'm going to give you the slides. Don't worry, don't write this. Yeah, got the slides. I'll send it to you. It is the duty of the people to bear any abuse of the supreme power, even then though it should be considered to be unbearable. And the reason is that any resistance of the highest legislative authority can never but be contrary to the law, and must even be regarded as tending to destroy the whole legal constitution. In order to be entitled to offer such resistance, a public law would be required to permit it, but the supreme legislation, capital L, capital S, capital S, capital L, would be such a law cease be supreme, and the people as subjects would be made sovereign over that which they are subject, which is a contradiction. He's saying it's not possible that now these people who the sovereign is meant to be protecting and they are subject to, that they're going to tell the law what to do. This is, you could be reading out of Mein Kampf or something like that, because this is very much an authoritarian understanding of how things should be. But it is not something which is foreign to liberal thought. You cannot argue it's impossible on liberal thought, because with social contractarianism, these arguments can be made. They simply can be made, and they have been made. And I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. John Locke, unsurprisingly, we talk about the apostasy law. He states, he talks about Jewish states. The first of those being initiated in the Mosaic, let's say, rights, and made citizens of that commonwealth, did afterwards apostatize from the worship of God of Israel. These were proceeded against as traitors and rebels, guilty of no less than high treason. For the commonwealth of Jews, different in that from all others, was an absolute theocracy, nor was there or could there be any difference between a commonwealth and a church. He's basically saying you can kill the apostate. John Locke. Now someone will say, well, we don't agree with John Locke. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing with John Locke. It's possible on social contractarianism. It's possible on this form of liberalism. You have an apostasy law. He's literally mentioning an apostasy law. And he's saying it's possible that someone can be killed for apostatizing in a country because they are seen as rebels and traitors to the theocracy. The same understanding as Immanuel Kant, that you have the supreme law, and if you go against it, then you can be killed for it. You know, and John Rawls, who came in the 20th century, he made some very fascinating comments to the effect of, you can stand if the supreme leader told you to stand in the face of the cannon, like a suicide mission, basically, that you have to and you should answer this. Why? Because of contractarianism. It makes sense on contractarianism. Why not? When you've sacrificed your freedom, what is the use, therefore, I could ask, of freedom if you have it and lose it straight away? It's almost like, you know, the Christian tradition where it says you're born with original sin and then Jesus comes and takes it away. So what am I doing here then? It's like this whole mythology has taken place, and I've been completely excluded from it. You've told the story already. I'm a superfluous addition to the story. I was given freedom, and that freedom was taken away from me, all before I was born. And when I was born, I'm now subject to these laws, which could mete out my death.
Yeah.
And so the death penalty, from this perspective, can be justified. So there are contradictions within liberalism, because on one hand you have to protect life, but on the other hand the social contract idea says,
It's just
well,
counterintuitive.
the supreme leader is in charge. So you have not only contradictions between liberalism and democracy, but contradictions between notions of liberalism from within the theory itself, because contractarianism is very straightforward, actually. So now, if you go back to the Islamic thing, obviously classically there has been the riddah laws and so on, which many of the As-Sarakhsi, in fact,
I wonder what's the point of all this. I mean, yes, it's good to know, but I wonder where he's going with it, because I'm learning a lot of things that I would never learn elsewhere. But what is the point? Right? I think we'll get there, right? I feel like he's going into it now, because if there is no point, thank you for teaching me all these terminologies and stuff, but for what?
and so on, which many of the
Let's
As-Sarakhsi,
see.
in fact, one of the Hanafi jurists, he actually literally said this is treason, and he gave very similar reasoning as did in his book Mabsut, by the way. He has a book called Al-Mabsut, and he gives the same, almost an identical reasoning. He said they're rebels, they're traitors, you know, all this kind of thing. To who? To John Locke. So it's conceivable on theory that it can be for the same reason. Now, here's what I say. This is actually a point of similarity between Muslims and liberals, if you like, or Islam and liberalism as a political theory.
Okay, here we go.
Islam doesn't say you were born free.
The point.
No, it doesn't say that in that language. But it does say we have a contract. We have a contract with God, and we have a contract with the supreme leader. The idea is the same. The idea is, in fact, identical.
Can we say that in Islam we're promoting communitarism, community?
Yes.
But here they're promoting individualism.
Right,
Individualism.
the laws are different, but the structures in terms of social contract are exactly the same. You have subject, and then you have the supreme leader. You have the Khalifa, you have the Wazir, or whoever it is. And there is Ta'at Wali al-Amr. There is, you have to obey the supreme leader. And some people go too far in this regard. You know, we've seen
We have far
you know,
left,
some
far
groups
right.
of Islam, you know, they say even if he rapes my wife in front of me, that's disgusting. You know, this is not what we're talking about. There's always limits. In fact, there's limits in Islam of these things. But the idea is, generally speaking, you know, there should be obedience to the supreme leader, otherwise chaos would ensue. Liberalism doesn't actually disagree, except for the anarchical strands of liberal kind of thought, or moving into like libertarianism and stuff like that.
I wonder, okay, let's use hijab as an example. When it comes to like his stance on politics, does he have any, like, does he stand in this political view or this political view, or does he not give a fudge about politics? Because we kind of like heard him mention that in a previous video, but I'm interested.
That which we talked about with Nozick as a prime academic
Very
example.
touchy subjects
having
though,
said that,
politics and then religion.
The
Oh,
idea
gosh.
of, okay, you have these laws for this protection, whether it's military protection or pensions that you're given or whatever the government gives, that's identical. So if someone says, why is it in your religion that you have all these laws of death penalty and ridda and all these kind of things, a very simple answer is we have a structure which is identical to the liberal structure.
So is he
And the main
liberal?
argument will be it's conceivable in both liberal structures and Islamic structures that those laws are implemented and or waived. Just as these structures have been shown to be implemented in these countries, they've also been shown to be waived. Now I've written a book, a very small book. It's called The Liberal Critiques of Ridda. It's a green book, you can buy it. And in it, really, I argue that in implementation, because this is very important, in implementation, when it comes to these things like death penalty and stuff, there's no evidence, especially if we look throughout history, that there is more, when it comes to Ridda, for instance, there is more implementation of Ridda laws than there are of treason laws. There's no evidence of that. There is something called, in the Ottoman records, because they're the most well kept, it's called the Sijil records. And they're written in Ottoman language, okay? So they needed a translator, they're called the Sijil, right? And fair enough, it's not a complete record, just like in any history, there's not complete records. But the Sijil, you can see basically the record from Bayezid II, I think it was, all the way up to Abdul Hamid II, or all the way, and beyond, after what you call the Tanzimat reforms in the mid-19th century. This is a wide, like a big chunk of, if you do a search on the Sijil, because you can actually do so electronically, you will not find, and write Ridda or keywords, you will not find more than a handful of cases. And most of the cases were pardons. There was no such implementation of the death penalty because someone has changed their religion. In fact, in my book, I give an example within, I think it was the years 1860 to 1870 or something like this, because as you know, the American Civil War took place between 1861 and 1865. And this Civil War saw death penalties take place, death penalties, because of symbolic acts of treason, not just military acts of treason. So the case study I give in the book is of a man called William Mumford. And William Mumford, he basically, the flags were different, the Union flag versus, and so he was burning the flag, he burned the flag. Yeah?
I think
So they took him.
Yeah, I think I watched a video about that. Of course, that's all my knowledge when it comes to history. It's literally from reaction videos. It's crazy, right? So that I would learn more from sitting here than going to school, honestly. I think this is the birth of also the national anthem of
He
America.
was burning the flag. He burned the flag. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they took him, and they, in front of everybody, put the rope around his neck and killed him. And it was, they killed him for what? They killed him for a symbolic act of treason. So I looked at the same time period in the Sijil records in the Ottoman Empire, because funny enough, at that same time, the Ottomans were having a civil war. You could say it's civil, or you could say it's with the Greeks, depending on how you define it.
Idea.
And a lot of Greeks were becoming Muslim, but then apostatizing just like some 2 weeks after or something like that, because they had wanted to test the Ottoman groups. And I picked out the only available court record judgment ruling on this particular case. What I found, they were Hanafi, and they used maslaha a lot in their judgments, which is the idea of the common good, the greater good. They waived that particular person who became an apostate, who was a Muslim and then went to being Christian. They didn't execute them. So the Ottoman Empire, at the same time where America was executing someone for a symbolic act of treachery. So in implementation, because the argument is, well, what kind of argument can you make? We're saying that it's conceivable that we're not saying it's inconceivable that in Islam these things cannot be implemented. And we're not saying that it's inconceivable that it will always be implemented in the liberal tradition. I'm saying it's conceivable on both traditions. that these things can be implemented, and it's conceivable on both traditions that these things can be waived. So therefore, if it's conceivable on both liberalism and Islam that ridda and or treason can be punished or waived, in that case, the liberal critique of Islam is fruitless and self-refuting.
I get the point.
It's a shot in the
now.
foot, because if you don't like the way this works, you've got the same exact
Yeah,
structure.
exactly.
It's not about the individual opinions, because this is, I've made these arguments before, and someone says, well, I don't agree with John Locke, I don't agree with Immanuel Kant, I don't agree with John Rawls, I don't agree with Rousseau, I don't agree with any of
So
them.
it's basically like liberalist. I don't know what's the term, like saying something about the Islamic law, but it's kind of like the same, kind of the same. That I think that's the point of this, right? Of this part of his talk. So what can you rebuttal back when a liberalist comes and accuse you of something, right? So I think this is what you can say back.
Fine, you don't have to agree with any of them. But the truth of the matter is, this is on principle how social contractarianism or liberal contractarianism works. It's a principle issue. The usul of the madhab, if you want to put it in that language, allows it. It allows it. On both madhab, the Islamic, or the madrasa, of religion, deen, and the liberal deen, if you want to put it in that language as well. The religion of liberalism. Why I call it a religion? Because depending on how you define religion. I mean, Emil Durkheim, sociologist, he defined religion as a set of ideas, and he's a huge, so why not take that definition of religion? It doesn't have to be divine worship, and you still have symbols and important words and practices and human rights, and it works in a very religious way. So the liberal, if you want to put it that way, religion allows it in some cases. Historically, it has implemented it for symbolic cases, and I say symbolic, not military cases. Treason, espionage and treachery and betrayal in America has not been, and does not even continue to be, the exclusive property of what? Of a military operation that is done against a state. No, it can be symbolic, it can be things that, and we've given that example of William Mumford, but these examples can be given even easier on these people that they kill with drone attacks without even trials. And by the way, how do they justify it? Because it's protection of the state. It really is a social contractarian understanding. And even then, there's peer-reviewed written articles arguing of the neoconservative strand of liberalism, because it is even in that. Neoconservatism is underneath liberalism. That these things are plausible and possible and sometimes even preferred. So when someone comes with, why does your religion allow this? Say,
There we go.
first of all, you answer the question, okay? Is that morality, blah, 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 whatever. And it's not always the case, as we know, it's conceivable. But then your religion allows it as well, if you want to put it that way. Your religion allows that as well, actually. And if you eliminate the social contract element, then you have anarchy.
Yeah.
So either you let the state kill the people, or you let the
Or let
people
peop-
kill the people.
People gotta
Go on,
kill
Simon,
each
say that
other,
again.
no?
Either you let the state kill the people, or you let the people kill the people. Because you think anarchy is going to produce a net, aggregate, less number of people that are going to be killed.
I was gonna say, I was like, if you had to choose, I don't like discussing my views because I don't want to get banged outside, right? We will not discuss.
Look at these states that are failed states. They're great examples. Yemen or Libya. Like, is there more death or less death? When there's not a strong authority, then there's oftentimes much more death, because everyone's trying to get their little plot of land, or tribal warfare and all this kind of. We see
I really have a lot to say, but
much more death, because everyone's trying to get their little plot of land, or tribal warfare and all this kind of. We see this all the time. So you can't get away from killing people in societies in history. So either you let the people kill the people, or you let the state kill the people. Now you might say, well, it doesn't have to kill the people. You can just put them in prison. Fine. You let the people punish the people, or you let the state punish the people. Punishment is a part of the human condition. Obviously, Hobbes believes that more than most of us probably would agree with him on this point. But these are the issues relating to how to govern human beings. Having said that, guys, this is the end of today's session, and it was.
And also, I definitely understand why this was part of the discussion, because I was wondering, I was like, okay, these are good points to somebody who wants to learn about liberalism and utilitarianism and all these isms, but what does it do for me? Yes, it includes the human rights and we should know that and all this stuff, but okay, like, what is your point? There we go. That is the point, the end. I should have been patient, which we kind of did, to wait for the end part of this discussion. And I do the last part I do definitely um yeah, I it's very, very true what he said. I'm just gonna say that. Yeah, thank you for this buy me a coffee request. It was very interesting. If you like this video, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.